Shalom, my dear brethren in Yahshua Messiah. Allow me to show the third method used by Christian theologians to misrepresent scriptures. The method here is jumping verses which does not support their false ideology. Allow me to make reference to the same professor, R.L. Solberg. In his struggle to prove that Christians are free to eat unclean animals using Mark chapter 7 verses 19, Professor tactfully peeled this evidence from the Torah, that is Leviticus chapter 11.
Leviticus chapters 11. Now, I'm not going to read through this entire chapter, but let's take a look at a couple key verses that factor into our discussion today. Now, in the opening paragraph, a number of larger animals are listed here, including camels and badgers and pigs. And then verse 8 says, "You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall not touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you." So it's not just that it was unclean to eat those animals. They weren't even allowed to touch their carcasses.
Now, there is something which I want us to be very keen on that. So, Professor is reading Leviticus 11 verse 8. The Israelites were not allowed to eat these unclean animals. And then, that's correct. The second part, they were also not allowed to touch their carcasses.
So, for example, if your camel died and you needed to remove its body from the camp, you'd become unclean and you'd have to undergo a purification ceremony. And then the next section describes...
Now, there is something which is misleading there. Professor is talking of touching the carcasses of these unclean animals. He gives camel as an example. Touching them, you becomes ceremoniously unclean. The question is, what about touching the carcass of a clean animal? You know, Professor is painting a picture on one side and silently is painting a wrong picture on the other side. The way Professor is explaining verse 8 contains some dishonesty, as I have pointed. The first part where he points that the children of Israel were not allowed to eat this unclean animal is correct. But the second part, where he selectively emphasizes that they were also not allowed to touch their carcasses, is misleading, owing to him jumping verses 39 and verse 40, as we will see shortly, which also explain that touching the carcasses of clean animals will make one unclean till the evening. So it's the same. Touching the carcasses of both clean and an unclean animal will make somebody unclean till the evening. But did you realize Professor is painting an untrue picture? His claim that one will have to undergo purification is also an exaggeration. The same verses only mention washing and remaining unclean until the evening, unless that is what Professor means by purification. Let's continue then, and you will be able to see him jumping verses 39 and 40. Let's continue.
Describes the unclean water animals, and then the text goes on to list birds and winged insects. And then verse 24 says, "And by these you shall become unclean. Whoever touches their carcasses shall be unclean until the evening." Now,
did you realize he doesn't want to show to his followers that even touching carcasses or clean animals would make one unclean. So silently he is teaching, deliberately he is teaching a false doctrines.
It's a pretty interesting phrase. 8 times between verses 24 and 40, there's a qualifier added to the uncleanness. It says the person shall be unclean until the evening. And that tells us that the uncleanness being discussed here is ritual impurity.
What makes him to conclude that? Because he is associating these unclean animals and their carcasses to what he is talking about, temporary nature of the impurity. But why is he going to jump now the evidence that even touching the carcass of a clean animal will make somebody impure?
Again, these kosher food laws weren't about nutrition or food safety. God obviously knows that bacteria and parasites don't go away at sunset. The phrase "until the evening" indicates the temporary ceremonial nature of the impurity. And then this focus on cleanness is really underscored in verses 31 through 38, which say that...
Now, we come to verses 31 to 38.
that when these unclean creatures come into contact with objects, even the objects are defiled, whether it's an article of wood or a garment or food or water. And some things, like an earth.
Now, do you realize even here that I think this one is past 38, there's something is hiding in past 39 and 40. That is my observation. So it would be good for professors to teach the world truth. What do you benefit by teaching falsehood? Okay, let's see.
Earthenware vessel or even an oven are to be destroyed if they come into contact with these unclean animals. And verses 43 and 44 say, "You shall not make yourselves detestable with any swarming thing that swarms, and you shall not defile yourselves with them."
Verse 39 and 40 say, "And if any beast of which you may eat die, it that touches the carcass thereof shall be unclean and ill-living." It is actually the same. The uncleanness will be the same for the carcasses of clean animals and unclean. But that is what Professor is hiding from his followers. In 40 it is saying, "And he that eat of the carcass of it shall wash his clothes." These are now the purifications, "and be unclean and ill-living. He also that bear the carcass of it shall wash his clothes and be unclean and ill-living." So this verse is showing that the Israelites will still eat carcasses of these clean animals. That is actually what Professor is trying to avoid. The foundation of his teaching on clean and unclean is untrue. Jumping verses which do not support your theology. He lay a false foundation on this topic of clean and unclean by him avoiding verses in the same chapter which does not promote his American culture, which allows eating of pigs and shellfish. And his foundation on his teaching, I can say, is selective use of scriptures. Why does he have to jump verses 39 and 40, which explain that touching carcasses of clean animals will also make someone unclean? Professors should have also shown that touching carcasses of clean animals would also make someone unclean till evening, but that will obviously weaken his false theology. And in the same video, Professor alluded that Israelites could not eat carcasses of clean animals, although he interjected unclean animals when he read Deuteronomy 14 verses 21. That must be the main reason why he is avoiding verses 39 and 40.
"Come unclean through them. For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourselves with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground." And once again, we see that idea of holiness connected with these food commands. Yahweh said, "Consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy. Be set apart, for I am holy." Which means, regarding these forbidden animals, you shall not defile yourselves with them and become unclean through them, right? Again, the law of Moses commands the Israelites, in no uncertain terms, that they'll become unclean and defiled by eating or even touching these forbidden animals.
Okay. Yes, they will become unclean. So in the eyes of Yahweh, eating these unclean animals, you defile yourself.
Okay. With that Hebrew perspective and understanding of the Torah laws about food, let's head back over to Mark 7.
Okay, we will also check how Professor R.L. Solberg is using Mark chapter 7 verse 19 in specific Bible versions. How we also avoid reading synoptic verses which is explaining the same scenario.